The dumbest bill in America, and you won't believe it, it's really bad. It's called the California Exit Tax. The California Exit Tax. What does that mean, exit tax?
Californian taxes, man. It's like...
So get this, podcast listeners. California State Assemblyman Rob Banta, Democrat of Alameda, introduces an exit tax, meaning that if you move out of California, and your income at the time you lived in California was at least $30 million, or you had $30 million of assets, that kind of thing, and you decide to move out of the state, that California is going to charge you an exit tax of 4%, and it's going to be a surcharge on top of all the other taxes, and it's not going to end. It's going to continue for 10 years while you live somewhere else. This guy, Rob Banta, I mean, talk about showing your cards as a progressive and what you really think about success and what you really think about people. Well, we have a number of clips from Mr. Banta in his own words. And first up, here's Rob Banta explaining his wealth tax. Here's the clip.
Have me, Neil. We're proposing a wealth tax, which applies a 0.4% tax on wealth above $30 million. It affects about 0.15% of the California population, so not the top 10%, not the top 1%, the top 0.15%, about 30,000 people, and should generate about $7.5 billion a year.
So once again, there's no way to describe success other than the fact that he's telling us how much money he's going to raise. He's not telling us what he's going to use the money for, at least not yet. And he's just going to raise a lot of money, and somehow all these people are just going to suck it up and take it in California. So Neil Cavuto asks a bunch of questions, and we have another clip with Mr. Banta, who is being interviewed by Neil Cavuto. And here is the clip.
That will happen, and we also have structured the wealth tax so that avoidance is not as simple as moving to another state. We have a phased-in approach whereby if you move in year one, you're 90% of the tax still applies to you. In year two, 80% of the tax, and so on for 10 years until it phases out.
So when you move, according to Mr. Banta, in his own words, it's hard to believe that he actually is explaining it and really proud of it. But in his own words, he's saying, yes, so when you move, you still got to pay the tax. So when you move to Texas out of California, or when you move to Nevada out of California, even though you've been there for a few years, you're still paying us what you owe us, because you owe us. Millennial, would you ever move to California now, if this ever passed?
No, maybe my dad should move back from California.
Does your dad live in California?
Yes, he does. And,
okay, then.
It is an expensive place to live already on its own. I can only imagine how much more expensive this will make the place. Especially because what do I think is going to be the natural, fallout of this? I do not believe his carried liability clause, which is basically that if you move, you'll still have to pay the state tax. I don't believe that is legal.
It's not constitutional.
Will be upheld in court, because now you're, I believe, violating interstate commerce rules. Just natural federalism. But so, he's going to probably decimate his tax base here because...
Let me ask you something about federalism. This is important.
Yes.
Because I'm glad you brought that up. So federalism is the idea, of course, that we have 50 states, and all 50 states have their own unique governments and their own unique way of governing, and which is a really good thing.
And they don't have any claim to each other.
And correct. And the interesting thing is you get to move from one state to another and decide freely decide where you want to go, depending on a lot of different considerations.
Yes.
And what this tells you about the exit tax is Mr. Banta, the Assemblyman Banta, who put the exit tax in, he wants all states to be the same. And it tells you, because really Californians, they're that arrogant, they want, and the far left, they want all states to be exactly the same. They want them to be really high tax states. They want you to really suffer if you're successful, and because that's the way they think. And all I can say is thank God for the Founding Fathers that they have this system of federalism, that we have options of places to go when states are screwed up by places like, in places like New York and Chicago and Seattle and California. Go.
Well, if you don't like California tax and spend policies, I have some news for you. There is a California senator on the ticket for for the Democratic nomination for president. So, just something to consider when you go to the polls, everybody.
Yeah, that could be problematic.
Yes, I mean, I could see, her as somebody pulling some of the levers in, because I don't think Joe is necessarily in his right mind. And just remember, some of the policies are going to be her initiative. And if you don't want to pay high federal income tax after we just, had a nice tax reform bill a couple of years ago, keep that stuff in mind, people.
So Neil Cavuto is the final clip on this. Neil Cavuto asks Rob Banta, the assemblyman from California, won't people leave if this bill passes? And we have that clip, and here it is.
No.
But the fact of the matter is they were apparently not appealing enough for scores of companies to leave your state, go to places like Texas or Florida, safer confines for themselves and their money. I mean, it hasn't been just an exodus, it's been a jailbreak.
Look, on the margins, Neil, some businesses may decide to leave. That's their decision. We still do have a lot of very successful businesses. We have quite a few successful businesses in California, Neil, as you know, Silicon Valley.
But they're down. They're running away. They are running away, right?
Well, our millionaires and billionaires have grown. Our economy has grown. I don't think the image of folks fleeing has panned out. I don't think it's historically true on the margin.
So what Mr. Banta doesn't understand is that there's always a tipping point. So in the state of Maryland, they passed a millionaire's tax, and then they continued to pass a bunch of other taxes as well, prior to the millionaire tax and since then. And it got to the point where there was a tipping point when people realized, hey, look, as much as I love living in this state, as great as it is,
can't afford it.
I just don't think this is a place I want to stay, because I don't see any end in sight, and I don't like the direction in which it's going, and I don't think the direction it's going to change, because there aren't enough people that are critical thinkers like me. That's what so many voters said. So they voted with their feet and they moved elsewhere. Same thing's happening in California. They're hitting that tipping point, and this guy doesn't realize it, Banta. So he's saying, you know what? I'm going to put this bill in anyway. It's an exit tax. We're still making lots of millionaires. We're still making billionaires. By the way, that is true.
That is true.
That is true.
Compared to 2011, have more millionaires and billionaires. But, do you want to maintain your millionaires and billionaires? Do you want to maintain the businesses in your country, in your state, that are helping to, keep the economy and your budget green? Well, in this case, it's never quite green in California. It's very red, They already operate under a deficit.
California red? Wait a minute. Green red? I don't know.
So
California's not red.
No.
They think they're green.
In the red.
Yes.
Is what I mean. They're in the, or
because
the black
of spending.
is the phrase. Because
that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
There's no, go ahead.
Yeah, so, do you want to maintain these economic powerhouses in your state? Because I read an article about this, and they were talking about whether this bill would even be like sound policy and effective. And the answer from basically everybody with a general, economic qualification said no. So the Tax Foundation, I view them as nonpartisan. The liberals think they're very partisan, but they just call out bad tax policy where they see it. They came out and said that it is impossible to effectively enforce, because it's all about enforcement. You can write policy and bills all you want, but can you get billionaires and millionaires to actually file these taxes? And the answer is no. And even California Berkeley professors have said no, that this is likely not going to happen, because what all these millionaires and billionaires can do is they can not realize their gains, keep them invested, not cash them out. They can move to Florida or move to any of these number of zero income tax state places, and then they can cash out. And you're not going to get anybody on the hook. And so you're just going to be driving all of these people away and realize none of the tax rates. And,
I get it, and I just wanted to finish with this by saying that in California, you still have people defecating in the streets. You have record homelessness. You have record taxes, and yet this guy still wants to raise more, and he wants to go after the successful, but he's not giving you any measure of success.
Yeah.
That is to say, he's not saying, well, if we raise this money, we're going to use it for this problem, and we're going to solve this problem. Therein lies the problem with the Democrat Party today, and that's why socialism doesn't work, because that's exactly what they always do. They always say, we're going to raise taxes because rich man bad, we're going to take rich man's money, and then we're going to solve the world's problems, but we're not going to give you any details.
And more and more, and they will never stop asking for more.
Exactly. And that's the last word from Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you from our millennial, Garrick Ross, and of course our producer, Adam Couture, and our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.